Hey there, listeners. This is Terry Cowley, your host of the R.M.Williams Outback podcast. Thanks so much for being here and welcome to Season 3. Growing up on the land in regional Victoria and living with her farmer husband Dan in the Western District, Jackie Elliott knows firsthand the unique challenges faced by women in rural areas with limited access to resources, healthcare and networking. This led her to set up the first Rural Women's Day in 2019. Now Jackie has facilitated more than 20 Rural Women's Day celebrations, welcoming more than 4,000 women to events across Australia. Welcome to the podcast, Jackie.
Thank you for having me, Terry. It's very exciting.
Congratulations on all the work you've done to bring rural women together. As I said, it was really your experience as a woman on the land that led you to want to set up these events for women. Can you tell me about your experience growing up as a farm kid?
Yeah, of course. So I probably had the idyllic farm childhood. We had animals galore. So my early in life, I actually lived in town. My dad was shearing full time. Mum was a stay-at-home mum. So I have an older brother and a younger sister. And when I think it was about 5 or 6, we actually moved out to a farm. So Dad was working also on a family farm, which was about, 17 k's from Kyneton in central Victoria at Barfold. And then the family partnership purchased another farm at Barfold, and that actually gave us a new house, so for my family to move into. And that was about 600 acres on the junction of the Campaspe River and Pipers Creek. So we had the ideal childhood of spending plenty of time at the dam catching yabbies, plenty of time exploring the creek. We had 2 waterfalls, all the wildlife you could ever think of. We hand-raised possums under the help of a wildlife carer. So I remember even things, just having chickens. And I remember a cocky turned up one day and he was a pet cockatoo that had escaped from his cage, and he ended up in our chicken house. So we had breakfast with him one morning before we went off to school, and then Mum found his owners. So just like very random things that come together to call it the best childhood. So we also raised potty calves, lambs. We had, a litter of puppies. And I remember that was the year of the Sydney Olympics because all the puppies were named after the mascots. So we had like Sid, Millie and Ollie. So yeah, life for 3 kids living on a farm, very involved, hands-on. If you got out of going to school one day or purposely missed the bus, you knew it wasn't a day to stay at home. You were going to go and help Dad. And I probably did that more occasions than not. So, you drag your feet and not have to get on the bus, and Dad would be like, okay, well, you're coming with me. And I maybe remember one time he was like, well, if you got to be at home, you better come and help. So he had to do something, whether it was cut down branches or something. So he stood in the tractor bucket and I was on the controls to lift him up and down. So, in some degree, though, Mum and Dad kept us children very safe on farms. So they also invited our primary schools and out to do like on-farm safety days. So although we were very free-range children, they did instill some very important safety aspects when we were out and about to ensure that we were looking after each other. Yeah, Terry, we had an incredible childhood and showing cattle, which led into a bigger love and passion of the beef industry, which I was fortunate to show cattle every, many weekends in the showing season, to showing steers up at Beef Australia, to being awarded the Matthew George Young Stockman Award and going to North America for 3 months to look at the beef industry. So yes, life growing up on the farm has definitely shaped who I am and what I'm passionate about today.
Absolutely. And so it's no surprise you live on the land now.
Yeah, so my parents ended up selling our beautiful property at Barfold. So it was due to a partnership dissolving, and my parents located to 600 acres south of Hamilton at Viaduct. And that was the same time of year that I actually finished and graduated from Ag College in Queensland and returned back to Victoria. So I came home with a diploma in ag, specialising in beef production. I had the opportunity to work in New South Wales on a feedlot. However, with my parents relocating, I felt like that was a good opportunity to be able to I guess, go and make where home was going to be a bit more familiar, try and meet some locals. And then that's where I started working locally in rural merchandise. And then very shortly met my now husband, Dan, who farms also in the Biduck area with his family. So we've been together 14 years, been married just over 3 years, and now live just in a little house in Biduck, a couple of acres. And my parents are about 3 k's from here, and Dan's family farms start in Biduck and head sort of towards Mount Napier. And we're very fortunate to live where we are.
Beautiful. Beautiful story. Perhaps if we can talk a bit about Rural Women's Day. What is it and how does it work?
Yeah, so Rural Women's Day started about 6-7 years ago now in 2019. And it really come from, initially the event was going to be a one-off. I'd never run a large event before. It took me 12 months to plan it and bring it together. I was expecting about 40 to 60 attendees, and we had 170 attendees at Dunkeld in the first year. And that was proof in itself that it needed to keep going, and the momentum was there through a social media page, which I used to promote that event at Dunkeld and, in collaboration with other local businesses. But the reason I started Rural Women's Day is for so long I felt really lonely and isolated, and I had loved ones around me, but it was not feeling like I belonged, kind of not feeling like I had a place to call home. And I was pulled in between wanting to return to Queensland, where I went to Ag College and made so many great friends, to living and working for rural merchandise and sort of traveling back and forth between the farm on weekends, and then spending time with Dan. And I was probably in that, I wanted to feel like I belonged somewhere, and I was not feeling that where I was doing or what I was doing. But I realized that, and especially now looking back, is, that it's home is a feeling and it's not a place, and it's feeling like you can belong in a community. It doesn't necessarily have to be the physical community that you're living in. And Rural Women's Day gave me a purpose and gave me something to look forward to and something to work on. It's been probably started off as a hobby and something I would spend every spare minute on, and creating what I knew would hopefully bring women together in the places, from other places that I'd seen them. So I wasn't really into local, playing local sport. That wasn't my thing. I didn't necessarily want to go to a bar and have a few drinks to try and meet people that way. There was a way that I wanted to engage and meet other people, and it needed to be in an environment that was really healthy and thoughtful and kind, and people who wanted to be there for a purpose, and they've chosen to be there not because of, the situation that they're in, whether they're making up mothers groups, friendships groups, joining clubs, etc. So Rural Women's Day was bringing together women who wanted to connect, and that's exactly what we achieved in our first event. And from that point, it's grown. So we've registered Rural Women's Day. It's a not-for-profit, and it has slowly grown over the years, where in COVID, that was the following year when we thought we'd have our second event. So COVID, we couldn't host an event in Victoria, but a friend in New South Wales could host an event. So we use the Rural Women's Day umbrella to support other women in their rural communities to host a Rural Women's Day celebration. And from there, sort of snowball effect, and other women cotton on and wanted to have that feeling or that event in their community. So my support, which is all voluntary, I work with other women in their communities who volunteer to host a Rural Women's Day in their community. They really have the control of what that event looks like. And then under our Rural Women's Day guidelines, we have some requirements that we need to meet. But we really want the women to feel empowered and confident in creating their own event, and then backing them 100% to ensure it can be successful. So now we have about 10 events a year across Australia, with supporting hosts in all different regions. And it's still slowly growing, but my capacity is somewhat limited. But this year, for 2025, we're having our third triennial national event, which is in Ballarat. So it's been 3 years in the planning. I don't know what Rural Women's Day looks like after this point, after 2025, but I'm sure with the incredible volunteer team that we've got, that it's going to keep going.
Can you tell me about some highlights from past events?
Definitely. And I think there's something about it having, like, I had good female friends from college, but they, were 2,000 kilometers away, and trying to have an opportunity to meet women locally was quite limited. And that's where, having our local event at Dunkeld, I've been able to create really beautiful friendships with women in the Western District or even across Victoria. So, even the other day I had lunch with a girlfriend, Emma, and I met her at the first event in 2019. So we've been friends ever since, and good friends with her mum, and our mums are good friends now. Like, we've been able to find women that have the same interests, or just great people to have conversation with, is quite a winner, I think. And it's a really lovely way to connect through Raw Women's Day, because you're all coming for different reasons.
Particularly memorable speakers or businesses involved?
Yeah, so a lot of our events revolve around having good food for lunch. So they're about 4 hours in length. We generally have a couple of speakers, or it might be a panel. If there's been local prizes donated, for many women, we're traveling to these events, and some women are traveling, 200 kilometers to come to a 4 hour lunch. We don't necessarily sell tables, so it's, you can purchase an individual ticket, and we encourage people to come individually, so you don't get any special discounts if you're, bringing a friend. And the whole idea is we want women to be able to attend these events on their own and go home with a new network or a new group of people that they can call friends. And then through our social media, we encourage the sharing of stories. Our social media now, the community has continued to grow, and people are really engaged in sharing what the event is that they've gone to. So we use our sort of national social media page to help promote each event, but then each event also has their own social media page, so it can be more localized. And that's really gives that host their opportunity to put their own spin on it and present things the way they would like. And when we're thinking about making decisions for Raw Women's Day, they really have to lead back to our values of community collaboration and celebration. And that community can mean either online or in person. It might be the local community that we're hosting the event. So community represents many different things. We might connect with a local flower farmer, and then someone that would like to design flowers. So there's a lot of contribution and collaboration involved in bringing an event together. And then celebrations. So we're not just celebrating the women who are there on stage speaking, we're celebrating the women who are attending, and then the broader community that has brought that event together. Connection feels different and means something different to everybody. For me, though, having connection makes my life easier. For everyday life, whether it's you see something and you send it to somebody, a quick phone call, a catch up, it means, I guess, I have something to look forward to. Or, if I'm going to a new town or driving through someone's town, I'll reach out to them and say, do you want to grab a coffee? And even if it doesn't lead to the actual having a coffee, but you chat to them on the phone when you're driving through their community, or it's really, I think that connection does bring that sense of belonging and that feeling of, you've got beautiful friendships and people that you can lean on, and you can do the same for them. So yes, connection for me is really about that sense of belonging, Terry. And it's sometimes hard to explain like how that can make you feel, but honestly, I think some days that connections is what got me out of bed. And I think connection, like, it extends beyond that, just regularly catching up. Like, I will come up with an idea, and I have so many different women who I'd reach out to and share that idea with. I really thrive on the opportunity to be able to connect others and be, I guess, behind the scenes and watch something unfold that would not have been possible. And a lot to do with Raw Women's Day. I've been able to connect women from one end of the country to the other. There's a highlight list of probably as long as my arm. Fanny Lumpson would have to be up there as a fantastic speaker. There is so many wonderful speakers. Pip Cameron from New Zealand came over and spoke at Raw Women's Day in 2022, and we've actually asked Pip to come back this year. Her story and the images that she shares of being on a New Zealand high country is mind-blowing. Like, you can't actually really imagine it. After I met her in 2022, I actually went over and visited the following year and stayed on their property. And that's it's been a wonderful friendships that's created through Rural Women's Day. Yet to ask her back as a speaker was, she was at the top of our list, the first person I contacted and said, would you come and speak? And her first answer is, yes, let's make it happen, regardless of what might be happening in that time. So the generosity of women who have come together to put Rural Women's Day together. So like Liv Coots, who's at Malmesbury, she's a flower farmer and florist, and a self-taught florist. And Liv is, she's won awards at the Melbourne International Flower Show, and she reached out a couple of years ago and said, I'd like to donate a flower piece for Rural Women's Day as a photo backdrop. So I was like, sure, if that's what you want to do, I will accept that. I was like, I give you full creativity. I don't know what I'm doing. So you take the charge, you do this. And then that's turned into, again, a really beautiful relationship. And Liv's now done several flower arrangements for several of our events. She travelled to New South Wales last year and did a floral workshop. This year, again, she's offering floral workshops at our Ballarat event. So the generosity of women that are really reaching out to be included in Rural Women's Day, what they offer. And the reason they keep coming back is because they get so much out of being a part of the Rural Women's Day community and connecting with the women that attend. In some ways, they've said it makes their life richer to be able to be a part of the Rural Women's Day community that's, really connective and helps them grow and gives them confidence. And it really is something that the more you put in or the more you have to offer, the more you gain or the more you get back. So it's really rewarding. I think too, Terry, and I can't go past recognising a company that's really got behind Rural Women's Day to back and support, and that's Squadron Energy. So they supported 3 of our events in 2023 and have come on board the last 2 years to be a national partner. So it was the most nerve-wracking thing I've ever had to do is deal with a corporate to figure out where we're at and what we can bring them and what they can provide us to keep going. And in their words, that Rural Women's Day needs to keep going, Jackie, and you need to be the one leading it. That was a really, I guess, eye-opening thing to me that someone had recognised, the value of voluntary contribution and the value of what Rural Women's Day brings to our regional communities to make an investment and go, we trust and believe in what you're trying to achieve.
What events have you got coming up that people who might be listening could plan to attend? I mean, I guess you can check your website, but are there a few that you want to mention?
Yeah, so this year for 2025, we've got our big national weekend event, which is in Ballarat, Victoria on October 4 and 5. There's about 20 speakers that are travelling from many different states, and who I said before, with Pip coming from New Zealand. It's a 2-day event. We've got several workshops that are optional on the Sunday. So it's really a great weekend, I think, to grab your girlfriends or come along solo and really take a weekend for yourself and enjoy the connections made and go home, knowing that there's people there that are for you and there's people there that are supporting you. So our other events, also we've got our first event at Kelbar in Queensland, which is recently sold out. But if someone was listening and would really like to attend Kelbar, please reach out. And we also got Rockhampton, Air Home Hill. So they're with a lot of help from Bendigo Bank, the community banks up that way. Our first event in Darwin, which is October 11. And we've got 2 events in South Australia at Orroroo and Kimba, Ngambie, and early next year we're going back to Western Australia. So there's lots of events happening, and I shouldn't forget to mention Nyngan, which is assisted and hosted by the Western Rural Connect team, who's a not-for-profit group based out of Dubbo, and they're supporting our Nyngan event again this year. So there's a lot of hands on deck for Rural Women's Day 2025. Because my hands will be full with a baby due also in October.
I'm going to ask you about that.
So, look, I couldn't be more grateful to have the team that we do. These ladies are either being able to travel to support the other events that I wouldn't be able to get to, or, they're very much in control. And like we want our host to do is make decisions and know that we're going to back them 100%.
You're in a bit of a transitionary phase at the moment.
Yeah, so after a couple of years of fertility treatment and wanting to grow our family, we're finally successful with IVF and having a baby in October. So I don't think I've actually let anyone know publicly that I'm having a baby in October, but that's the month.
Congratulations, and that's a big deal.
It is, Terry, and obviously over the last couple of years thinking, if I have a baby, what's going to change for Women's Day? I don't think much will change because it has got a fantastic team supporting it. My vision might change to some degree, or I guess a whole new world is going to be opened up to me and what I can do for the women attending World Women's Day. But I really don't want it to lose, I guess, the purpose that we're coming together for. So this is just another, and I wouldn't even call it a challenge, it's an opportunity. So it's really another stepping stone for Royal Women's Day, and it can only get better. So that's probably how I look at what the future looks like for Royal Women's Day. Is this is just another thing that, you go, okay, well, what can this lead to, or what are the opportunities out of this?
So would you say you're moving to a more professional model?
I think with Royal Women's Day, and I think why it's stayed as successful it has been, is because I've been very hands-on with all of our events, the decision making, and it's something I don't want to lose. It's something that has been very much my baby that I've continued on for the last 6, nearly 7 years. I am really fortunate that when something opportunity comes up, I can make a decision on the spot. Yes, we've got 2 directors that some of those bigger decisions we have a meeting about, or we make a discussion, but ultimately, for most of what happens with Royal Women's Day, crosses my desk and I can make a call on it. Or if one of our volunteers reaches out or sends me a text message, I can reply and they can have an answer instantly, or we can make it up on the spot as we go. So I would never want Royal Women's Day to become where something has to wait until a meeting or has to go through several people. Yeah, so I feel that if my capacity comes to a point where I can't do Royal Women's Day, we might make it smaller for a couple of years and not do as many events, or we might work on particular projects. But then I can't overlook our volunteers and our team that are out there running events. Like, they've been doing them on their own for the last couple of years anyway, with just my support on the ground on the day, and then sort of that behind the scenes in the accounts and ticketing side. So Royal Women's Day can keep going with the team that it has supporting those events. But overall, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what might change. And like some people's guesses is probably as good as mine, because we've never really planned too far ahead, except for our Ballarat event. It's been in the program for 3 years. So there's no big decisions that need to be made yet. As time progresses, things will look a bit clearer and I'll have a bit better picture. But really, Royal Women's Day has sometimes been on making a decision today and making something happen for tomorrow, or it happens on the fly.
Yeah, it keeps it all nimble. And in terms of the, your life beyond October, you just have to make it up as you go along, like every other parent.
Exactly. It doesn't come with a handbook, and Royal Women's Day has no handbook.
Yeah, fair enough. Good training for you then. I'm guessing that having a significant sponsor is really crucial to the future success or the future ongoing nature of Royal Women's Day.
Yeah, and getting sponsorship is harder and harder, I think, in rural communities. And when Squadron Energy expressed their interest to support our first 3 events in New South Wales a couple of years ago, I hadn't even heard of Squadron Energy at the time, and I've learnt a lot more about them. And their support was really, they saw the value of what Rural Women's Days brings to rural and regional communities. I had the opportunity to meet a couple of employees for Squadron Energy, and the feedback that they took to their office was, we need to see Rural Women's Day continue and keep growing, but they could also see that financially things were difficult purely for our insurance is through the roof, and having online subscriptions now, and our website needed updating. I think now running a not-for-profit, it's a minimum of nearly $15,000 for the year just in costs to keep Rural Women's Day going. I think, if you looked at 10, 15 years ago, running a little not-for-profit usually happened with pen and paper and like petty cash tin, and there wasn't a lot of finances involved, and you could really run a little not-for-profit on the smell of an oily rag. And we've been doing that, but our not-for-profit isn't so little anymore. We do have to employ a lawyer to help us with the legal side aspects of running a not-for-profit. Our accounting fee, there's got to be some systems in place. And so just running Rural Women's Day and keeping it afloat was costing a lot. And then it's an expense that we didn't necessarily want to pass on through our ticket costs. And we want to make Rural Women's Day as affordable as possible for women to attend. And then that's then based on local sponsorship. And then we basically put in all of our expenses to an event and then divide and hope, okay, if we're going to sell 100 tickets, what money do we need to cover what's left over? So when Squadron Energy expressed their interest to come on board and support Rural Women's Day nationally, I had no idea what to ask for. They probably didn't know what to offer. They didn't know where we were at, what we were expecting. And I was able to work with Emma, one of their employees, to build out a budget and say, okay, if money wasn't a figure for what we're trying to achieve, this is what it looks like if we had the funds to spend to do X, Y, Z. We were really fortunate that Squadron Energy wanted to match our expenses to ensure that we didn't have a burden or our volunteers' time wasn't taken up on applying for grants or trying to find other sponsorship. We want to get about 10 events a year across Australia, and they're supporting that. So they've come on for a second year, and again, they're just the most supportive company that we could have been picked up by, and sort of picked up with both hands and gone, we want to, see this thrive and still be successful. From that point, they've got project managers that can support us. They've got people that can do media releases. We can book out insurance through them. If I've got terms and conditions I need to sign, I can send it to their team to help me look through it and make sure we have everything covered. It's beyond a financial support. And then they've opened us up to other opportunities to be supported by R.M.Williams with 8 pairs R.M.Williams boots at our events this year. They've got so much to offer Rural Women and Rural Women's Day that it goes far beyond a financial contribution. Squadron Energy have wind towers and solar and battery, and mostly Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria.
Yeah, I guess in the interest of full disclosure, if Squadron Energy is owned by Tatarang, also Tatarang does also own R.M.Williams, which owns Outback, the publication I work for. And speaking of Outback, Rural Women's Day was featured in issue 162 of Outback magazine, which you can get from any good newsagents or directly from us at outbackmag.com.au. We will actually post you a magazine in Australia for no extra postage cost. So anything else you'd like to add, Jackie, in summing up? Feel free to give a last-minute plug to some of the events coming up.
It's always a hard one on how to recap something, Terry, and I'm actually really excited about having you in Ballarat this year.
Yes, I'm coming to your event in Ballarat. Really looking forward to it. No,
it's fantastic. And yeah, I think, things have evolved for Rural Women's Day. I think when we first chatted, you had met me in Canberra. It was part of the Kandina Group ABC Farmer of the Year Awards. And that award, it was a huge experience. And as Rural Women's Day has grown and evolved, it's like a Ferris wheel that keeps coming around, and something good keeps coming out of Rural Women's Day, what's been created or the networks in the past. And I guess the best thing I could say is anyone listening is, one, having the opportunity to speak on Outback podcasts was a bit nerve-wracking actually, because I'm not the typical stories that you might read in Outback. I'm not working in red dirt all day. I get to look at generally or mostly rolling green hills of Viaduct.
We have our fair share of brown dirt as well, Jackie.
And yes, sometimes things are improving, I must say, in the Western District at the moment. Yeah, I think to be able to share about the Rural Women's Day story, it's, I've had an opportunity to do this a lot of times, and it still makes me nervous to get on a mic and share the Rural Women's Day story. But I don't think anyone's ever heard the same part of Rural Women's Day, because every conversation goes in a different way, and there's so many aspects that make up Rural Women's Day. And so, hearing this one short podcast episode, there's so much more that goes on behind the scenes and so many things beyond social media. And I would say, so either come along to a Rural Women's Day event or, connect on Rural Women's Day and hear and read different parts of the Rural Women's Day story, because it really is so many small moments that have made up the bigger picture. And I would encourage anyone to get out and about and catch up with women in their life, and don't make excuses, and get on and ensure that you retain those relationships, because they are incredibly important for rural women on the land.
Make those connections. And all the best for your big event in October, and I might be talking about both of them.
Thank you so much, Terry. It is going to be a big event, that's for sure.
It's going to be a big month.
It certainly will. I just hope the baby wants to stay put for before that weekend.
Yeah, well, that would be very considerate of them.
Otherwise, we'll have lots of people to cuddle.
That's true. Thanks a lot, Jackie.
Thank you, Terry.